Welcome to the next video of Animation Universal. Cute and lovely dolls have always been a favorite toy for children, but adults don't always share the same affection for them. Many people have expressed that while dolls are crafted to look lifelike, their soulless expressions can sometimes send chills down our spines. Moreover, because they resemble miniature humans, they are believed to have the potential to become conduits for dark, malevolent forces. Evil spirits possessing dolls can turn them into mediums that spread terror among us. Below are the four most famous haunted dolls in the world, which you may have heard of at least once. Make sure to watch until the end of the video and let us know which doll you find the scariest. Joliet, the cursed doll with a haunting legacy. Joliet is an unassuming doll with nothing particularly striking about its appearance. For over a century, it has been passed down through 4 generations of a single family. The doll carries with it a terrifying curse, yet despite this, family members have grown deeply attached to it and cannot bring themselves to discard it. It is said that 4 spirits reside within the doll, a number that is certain to increase as the doll is passed down from mother to daughter in the family's 5th generation. Would you be able to cradle this doll in your arms, nurture and cherish it, knowing it carries a dreadful curse, bringing pain and torment to the family it belongs to? Anna G., she chose to remain anonymous when mentioned, owns such a doll named Joliet, which dates back centuries. At night, the doll is said to emit piercing cries, unlike any single child's voice. These cries come from multiple children, all male. Sometimes it's just one child crying. Other times it's several or even all of them at once. Anna knows the names of all 4 spirits said to reside within the doll, and this knowledge has seemingly played a role in preserving the doll to this day. The haunted and cursed doll. The story begins 4 generations ago when Anna's great-grandmother was gifted a doll named Joliet by a close family friend. At the time, she was expecting her 2nd child, and the doll was intended as a thoughtful present for the unborn baby. However, what she didn't realize was that the giver harbored jealousy and a sinister hatred. The exact reason for this envy remains unclear. But after delivering the doll, the friend never returned to the family again. What was meant to be a meaningful gift turned into the source of heartbreaking tragedies for the family. Soon after, Anna's great-grandmother gave birth to a healthy baby boy, unaware that something evil was approaching. 3 days after the baby was born, he tragically passed away from a mysterious and unexplained illness. But the horror didn't end there. This devastating cycle of misfortune would haunt the family for at least 4 generations. The curse can be summarized as follows. Every woman in the family would have 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. However, the boy would always die 3 days after birth. After her son's death, Anna's great-grandmother noticed a strange change in the doll. She began hearing the soft cries of a baby emanating from Joliet. The cries were most audible in the stillness of the night, and she knew they belonged to her deceased son. Despite the sorrowful reminder of her son's sudden death, she couldn't bear to part with the doll. She believed that some invisible force had trapped her son's soul within it, and she felt compelled to protect her beloved child. No one knew what would happen to the fragile spirit inside if the doll were damaged or destroyed. The doll was later passed down to Anna's grandmother when she came of age. She was aware of her brother's death and the belief that his soul was trapped within Joliet. But she never expected the same tragedy to repeat itself with her own children. She had 2 children, a boy and a girl. Once again, the boy died at just 3 days old, and his soul joined the doll. What was once the sound of a single child crying inside Joliet became the cries of 2. This cycle continued generation after generation, and today, Anna is the current owner of the cursed doll. She too experienced the loss of her baby boy 3 days after his birth. Anna says that her son's cries have now joined those of the 3 previous children. Anna, like the generations before her, will never abandon the doll. Though the loss of their sons has brought the family immense grief, They are the only ones who can hear the cries of their children and the others within Joliet. To this day, no one knows when or if this curse will ever be broken. Mandy the doll. This story took place in Canada. According to the tale, the origins of the haunted doll Mandy trace back to around 1910, when a farmer was passing by an abandoned barn. Suddenly, he heard sobbing and crying coming from within. The cries sounded like those of a child. Feeling uneasy in the eerie silence surrounding him, he decided to investigate the source of the sounds himself. After searching the barn, he found a ladder leading down to what appeared to be a cellar or basement. As he descended, the farmer was met with a horrifying sight that would haunt him for the rest of his life. In the cellar lay the long dead body of a young girl. In her arms, she was still clutching her doll tightly. The farmer took the doll home, cleaned it thoroughly, and named it Mandy. There is no further information about the unfortunate girl, though her death might have been the result of a crime. Alternatively, she could have run away from home or even fallen into the basement while playing unsupervised. Perhaps she was injured and attempted to escape the darkness but couldn't. Yet why no one searched for her or reported her missing remains unexplained. By the 1920s, it seemed that Mandy had endured a rough existence. Her porcelain head was cracked and poorly repaired, leaving it deformed. One of her glass eyes was also reattached carelessly, giving her a bulging, unsettling appearance. Then, in 1991, a woman donated an old doll to the Quesnel and District Museum in British Columbia, Canada. She told the museum's curator that the doll was old and that she didn't want her daughter playing with it anymore. The curator noted that, despite the doll's wear and tear, both Mandy and her clothing were remarkably well preserved for being over 100 years old. The museum officially adopted Mandy, but that's when the strange occurrences began. Mandy's new home. For a doll, Mandy has a terrifying appearance. Her eyes are made of glass, with her right eye cracked and bulging out unnervingly. Her clothes were old and discolored, so they needed to be cleaned. The museum staff decided that Mandy wasn't ready to be displayed to the public yet. To ensure that any insects or pests hiding in her clothes or body would be eliminated, the staff placed Mandy in a plastic bag. Although no insects were found inside the bag, the staff insisted that the doll had shifted positions and that rustling sounds came from within the bag. From the beginning, employees reported feeling uneasy ever since Mandy's arrival. Before Mandy was put on display, she was left alone in a room. When the staff returned the following morning, the entire room was in disarray. It looked as if someone had been throwing things around, leaving items scattered everywhere. Since no one had been in the room overnight, the only plausible explanation was that Mandy had thrown a tantrum and caused the mess herself. Is Mandy crying? This strange phenomenon occurred multiple times during different stages of preservation. When Mandy was finally ready for exhibition, her face was left untouched, fearing it was too fragile to restore. Everyone who viewed her display reported feelings of unease and anxiety. These emotions became overwhelming, forcing the exhibit to close. A psychic who investigated Mandy claimed that the doll harbors the spirit of a deceased girl. She seeks attention and becomes angry, even destructive, when ignored. Although Mandy is occasionally displayed, she spends most of her time stored in the museum's basement. According to accounts, the girl who owned Mandy was injured and trapped in the basement, where she eventually died. She passed away, clutching Mandy tightly. Somehow, the girl's spirit transferred into the doll, where it remains to this day. The psychic's revelation stirred great curiosity among the museum staff. The museum curator visited the woman who donated Mandy to learn more about her story. The donor revealed chilling details not previously disclosed. While she initially claimed she gave Mandy away because her daughter disliked the doll, the real reason was far more disturbing. The woman insisted she often heard a child crying in her basement. When she went to investigate, she found nothing, only Mandy and an open window nearby, with the wind rustling the curtains. Yet the basement windows were always securely locked. Who had opened the window? This unsettling experience happened repeatedly, leading her to find a new home for Mandy. After Mandy was given to the museum, the crying stopped. Visitors to the museum often reported feelings of unease when near Mandy. Staff members even claimed to hear tapping on Mandy's protective glass case. Once, a stuffed sheep placed inside Mandy's case was found tossed out and lying in a corner as if she had rejected it. Although Mandy exhibits mysterious and unexplained behaviors, she has never harmed anyone. She is thought to be childlike, prone to tantrums when displeased. Mandy is also known to enjoy playing pranks, particularly on museum staff and volunteers. Items such as lunches, pens, photos, and personal belongings often went missing, only to reappear later, or not at all. Some claims about Mandy may sound implausible, but no definitive explanation exists for her peculiar stories. It's said that her eyes and fingers sometimes move, and her unsettling gaze seems to follow you around the room. Mandy also has an unusual affinity for electronics. Attempts to photograph her often result in cameras malfunctioning. However, the equipment works perfectly in other rooms or when used to capture other objects. Mandy shares some similarities with another infamous haunted doll, Robert. Both have unsettling appearances and a penchant for disrupting electronic devices. In 1999, a book titled Supernatural Stories Around British Columbia detailed Mandy's eerie incidents and her connection to the museum. The mysterious origins of Robert the Doll. The terrifying story of Robert the Doll began when it was gifted to a boy named Robert Eugene Otto in 1904. Over time, it became an iconic symbol of horror in Key West, Florida. At first glance, Robert the Doll seems like an ordinary toy, but its unique details set it apart. Its black beaded eyes, brown fabric face with pin-like holes, and chillingly enigmatic smile give it an eerie human resemblance. Dressed in a sailor's outfit, allegedly one worn by its deceased owner, the doll holds a peculiar dog-like figure with large eyes perched on its lap. Many believe Robert is haunted, claiming it caused accidents and strange phenomena. Witnesses say Robert's eyes seem to observe the world, and the doll even moves on its own. According to legend, Robert the Doll was first owned by a boy named Robert Eugene Otto. Some say the doll was a gift from his grandfather in 1904, while others suggest it was given by a family maid who cursed it. The doll was made by the Steiff Company, known for producing high-quality toys. It was likely intended as a window display, but somehow ended up in the Otto household, becoming Eugene's closest companion. Eugene adored the doll, naming it after himself and dressing it in his own clothes. Despite its large size, he carried it everywhere. Their bond seemed innocent until Eugene's parents overheard strange deep voices answering their son's whispers to the doll. Cory Convertito, the curator of Fort East Martello Museum, where Robert now resides, says that when people speak about the doll, they do so as if referring to a living entity. It's not just a doll, it's Robert, a being in its own right, she explains. A beloved toy becomes a nightmare. However, it wasn't long before strange occurrences began to plague the Otto family. Eugene's parents would wake up in the middle of the night to hear their son screaming, surrounded by overturned furniture. As Robert Eugene Otto grew older, the doll seemed to grow more sinister. Other dolls in the house were found torn to pieces, and Eugene would occasionally shout, "Robert did it!" Not only the family but others also experienced eerie events. A plumber hired to repair pipes around the Otto home claimed to hear the laughter of children, even though no one else was present. While working, he noticed Robert had shifted positions, moving from one side of the window to the other. The plumber also stated that objects he initially saw placed in Robert's lap would later be found on the opposite side of the room as if they had been thrown. As Eugene grew up, he left the house to pursue his studies. After attending the Art Institute of Chicago, the Art Students League in New York, and the Sorbonne in Paris, he eventually married and returned to his childhood home at 534 Eaton Street in Key West, Florida. He called the residence the Artist House. which has since become a haunted bed and breakfast, attracting visitors curious about Robert the doll's story. Eugene created a special room for Robert in the attic, furnishing it with furniture, toys, and even a teddy bear of Robert's own. However, Eugene's wife wasn't fond of the childhood doll and insisted that her husband store it away. Despite this, Robert was often seen sitting on a chair by an upstairs window, visible to passers-by on the street below. Locals claimed to have seen the doll vanish and reappear in different positions or noticed its eyes following them as they walked by, prompting many to avoid the street altogether. Visitors to the artist's house reported hearing footsteps coming from the attic and witnessing objects mysteriously moving within the home without explanation. Becoming a legacy with unexplainable mysteries. After Robert Eugene Otto passed away in 1974, a woman named Myrtle Reuter purchased the artist house and became the new owner of Robert the doll, who still wore the sailor suit of his late owner. Myrtle lived with Robert for 20 years and even brought him along when she moved to a new home in the 1980s. However, in 1994, she donated the eerie doll to the Fort East Martello Museum, a historical site in Key West, Florida. Even as she handed him over, Myrtle insisted that the doll was truly haunted. The museum accepted Robert and his belongings, dismissing Myrtle's claims as nonsense. Yet, almost immediately, staff members began reporting strange and inexplicable occurrences while taking care of the doll. Curious visitors flocked to the museum, lining up to see Robert on display. Enthusiasts of the supernatural even began writing letters directly to Robert. Cory Convertito, the curator of the Fort East Martello Museum, revealed, "Robert receives 1 to 3 letters daily. Since arriving here, he has received nearly 1,000 letters in total. On top of that, visitors leave him other offerings, such as candy, baked goods, and even money." Don't take a photo of Robert without his permission. So, what is the strangest legend about Robert? Like many celebrities, Robert does not like anyone taking pictures of him without permission. It is believed that you must ask him first. Many people who have photographed him claim to have experienced nothing but bad luck afterward. I once read an actual letter on a website from a visitor who had taken a photo of Robert without asking. The author shared how they faced bankruptcy, lost their pet shortly after, and even experienced a near-death situation. The person eventually wrote a letter to Robert to ask for forgiveness, as it is believed to be the only way to end the misfortune. What do you think? Would you take a photo of Robert? And if you did, would you ask first? Who's ever heard of asking a doll for permission to take a picture? Ridiculous, right? But if you decide to visit Robert and snap a picture of him, please don't share it with me unless you've received his approval. In 2015, a movie about the doll was released, simply titled Robert. The film closely follows the original story of Robert the doll, beginning with how it first came into the Otto family's possession. Even after 119 years, Robert remains a symbol of horror tied to the unsolved mysteries of Key West, Florida. To this day, many visitors report that their cameras malfunction when attempting to photograph Robert, and other electronic devices mysteriously break without explanation. Can a soul truly possess an inanimate object or a doll? That depends on whom you ask. Skeptics may scoff at anything considered supernatural. But for those who believe, it's not unreasonable to trust the accounts of people who have encountered mysterious phenomena like Robert the doll, or even Mandy. Annabelle, the haunted doll at the Warren Occult Museum. Annabelle sits inside a glass case with a handwritten prayer to God inscribed on it, wearing a pleasant smile on her happy face beneath her bright red hair. At first glance, she appears to be just an ordinary Raggedy Ann doll, a character from Johnny Gruelle's stories manufactured in the mid-20th century. However, what makes her stand out is the sign below the glass case that reads, "Warning, positively do not open." For visitors new to the Warren Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, Annabelle might look like any other Raggedy Ann doll. But from the beginning, this doll was anything but normal. Since its first alleged haunting in 1970, Annabelle has been claimed to be a vessel for demonic forces, causing numerous violent incidents and at least 2 near-death tragedies. In recent years, the stories surrounding Annabelle have inspired a series of horror films. But how much of Annabelle's story is true? Is this doll truly a vessel for a demonic entity seeking a human host to possess their body and soul? Or is it simply a child's toy turned into the subject of highly profitable ghost stories? The origin of Annabelle in real life. Although Annabelle doesn't have porcelain skin or the beauty of the doll depicted in films, the Annabelle doll housed at the Occult Museum of the famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren still exudes an eerie presence due to its otherwise ordinary appearance. Details like Annabelle's stitched features, including her half-smile and orange triangle-shaped nose, evoke memories of childhood toys. If you could ask Ed and Lorraine Warren, Ed passed away in 2006 and Lorraine in early 2019, they would tell you that the handwritten warnings scrawled on Annabelle's glass case are absolutely necessary. According to the Warrens, the doll is responsible for 2 near-fatal accidents, 1 tragic death, and a series of demonic activities spanning over 30 years. The first of Annabelle's infamous hauntings is said to have occurred in 1970, back when the doll was brand new, freshly crafted, and sitting in its box. The story was relayed to the Warrens by 2 young women and retold by the couple for years afterward. According to the account, the Annabelle doll was a gift from a mother to her 28-year-old daughter, a young nurse named Donna, or possibly Deirdre, as it has been referred to in some versions, for her birthday. Thrilled with her gift, Donna brought the doll back to her apartment, where she lived with a roommate named Angie. At first, the doll was simply a charming decorative piece, sitting on the living room sofa and greeting guests with its cheerful, colorful appearance. But it didn't take long before the 2 women began to notice that Annabelle seemed to move around the apartment on her own. Donna would leave Annabelle on the sofa before heading to work, but upon returning home in the evening, she would find the doll in her bedroom even though the door was closed. The 2 women later began to find notes scattered throughout their apartment with messages that read, "Help me." These notes were written on parchment paper, a type of paper they didn't even own. One afternoon, Angie's boyfriend, known only as Lou, was in the apartment while Donna was out. He heard rustling sounds, as if someone had broken in. After searching, he found no sign of an intruder, but he discovered the doll lying face down on the floor. Suddenly, Lou felt a sharp pain in his chest and looked down to find bloody claw-like scratches running across his torso. Strangely, when Lou was taken to the hospital, the wounds healed almost immediately and disappeared entirely within 2 days. Following Lou's frightening experience, the women decided to seek help from a medium to address the paranormal issues. The medium conducted a seance and concluded that the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins, whose body had been discovered years earlier on the land where the apartment building now stood. The medium explained that the child's spirit was benevolent and merely wanted to be loved and cared for. Feeling sorry for the little girl, the 2 young nurses decided to allow the spirit to stay in the doll. The paranormal investigators step in. However, the strange occurrences didn't stop there. The unsettling phenomena continued to plague the 2 women, haunting their minds. Eventually, Donna and Angie sought the help of a priest, Father Cook, to exorcise the spirit that haunted their apartment. Father Cook, in turn, reached out to renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren for assistance. According to the women, the troubles began when they started to sympathize with the doll. The Warrens believed that instead of housing a benevolent spirit, as the medium had suggested, the doll was a vessel for a malicious demonic force seeking a human host. The Warrens' report of the case states, "Spirits do not possess inanimate objects like houses or toys. They possess people. A spirit can attach itself to a location or an object, but it ultimately seeks to possess a living human soul." This is what happened in the Annabelle case. The spirit manipulated the doll and created the illusion of it being alive to garner recognition. the spirit did not intend to stay attached to the doll. Its goal was to possess a human host. Ed and Lorraine Warren identified what they believed were signs of demonic possession, including teleportation, the doll moving on its own, materialization, the parchment paper notes, and physical attacks, loose claw-like scratches. The Warrens advised Father Cook to perform an exorcism in the apartment and then took Annabelle to their occult museum, hoping to end the entity's reign of terror. Even after removing Annabelle from Donna and Angie's apartment, the Warrens documented additional paranormal events involving the doll within minutes of taking custody. Following the exorcism, they secured Annabelle in the back seat of their car and avoided driving on highways to minimize the risk of accidents. However, even back roads proved treacherous. During the drive, Lorraine recounted that the car's brakes would fail intermittently, nearly causing several catastrophic accidents. It wasn't until Ed sprinkled holy water on the doll that the brake issue ceased. 18 a.m. Upon arriving home, the Warrens placed Annabelle in Ed's study. They reported that the doll would levitate and move around the house, even after being locked in a separate room outside the main building. Eventually, they decided to seal Annabelle permanently. The Warrens built a special wooden and glass case, inscribed with the Lord's Prayer and the Prayer of Saint Michael. From that point on, Ed recited a binding prayer daily to ensure the spirit within the doll could not escape. Since being confined, Annabelle has not moved again, though it is believed that the spirit within still seeks to connect with the outside world. On one occasion, a priest visiting the Warrens Museum picked up the doll and mocked its demonic power. On his way home, he was involved in a near-fatal car accident that totaled his new vehicle. The priest later claimed he saw Annabelle in his rearview mirror moments before the crash. Years later, another visitor struck Annabelle's case and laughed, mocking those who believed in the doll's powers. On his way home, he lost control of his motorcycle and crashed into a tree, dying instantly. His girlfriend, riding on the back, survived and reported that they had been joking about Annabelle right before the accident. In the years that followed, Ed and Lorraine Warren shared these stories as evidence of Annabelle's terrifying power, though none of the incidents were ever verified. The identities of the young priest and the motorcyclist were never revealed. Donna and Angie, the nurses and Annabelle's first victims, never spoke publicly about their experience again. Father Cook also remained silent about his involvement in the exorcism. Annabelle on the big screen. Whether or not any of the hauntings truly occurred, the stories of the Annabelle doll provided director-producer James Wan with the perfect inspiration to create a lucrative horror cinematic universe. Since 2014, Wan has written scripts about the violent, haunted Annabelle doll, drawing inspiration from the real-life version. Of course, there are notable differences between the doll locked away in the Warrens' home and its cinematic counterpart. While the real Annabelle is a children's toy with exaggerated features, the movie version is modeled after antique, handcrafted porcelain dolls, complete with braided hair and gleaming glass eyes. Annabelle's mischievous antics were also exaggerated to heighten the drama and appeal of the films. Instead of terrorizing two roommates, the movie version of Annabelle moves from house to house, attacking families, possessing members of a satanic cult, murdering children, disguising itself as a nun, and wreaking havoc within the Warrens' own home. Wan's scripts have led to 3 successful films featuring the creepy doll, and it seems the story of Annabelle is far from over. Inside the museum housing Annabelle. Although both Ed and Lorraine Warren have passed away, their legacy continues through their daughter Judy and her husband, Tony Spera. Real-life fears surrounding the Annabelle doll escalated in August 2020 when rumors spread that the doll had escaped from the occult museum. While the rumor quickly gained traction on social media, it was later confirmed to be false. Spera himself posted a video showing him standing beside the Annabelle doll in the museum. "Annabelle is still here," Spera assured everyone. "Well, I shouldn't say alive. Annabelle is here after all the infamous events it's caused. The doll will never be allowed to leave the museum," Spera declared. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any interesting and informative videos. Thank you all so much. For now, goodbye and see you in the next video.